The night my husband said, "Nobody else wanted you. I married you out of pity," something in me went completely still. Not hurt. Not anger. Silence. The kind of silence that comes right before everything changes. I didn't defend myself, I didn't raise my voice, I didn't even look surprised. I just let him believe it. Because while he was busy underestimating me, I was already 10 steps ahead. Every insult he threw at me, I stored it, every lie. I verified it, every betrayal. I documented it. He thought I was staying because I had nowhere else to go. The truth? I was staying because I wasn't done yet. And when I finally walked away, I didn't lose anything. He did. If you've ever been underestimated, if someone ever made you feel invisible while you were quietly becoming stronger, this story is for you. Before we go on, tell me something honestly. What's one word you'd use to describe how it feels to be underestimated? Drop that word in the comments, I want to see how many of us have lived this. And if you feel this kind of story already pulling you in, like it, subscribe, and stay. Because what I did next wasn't loud. But it was unforgettable. My name is Emily Lauron, and for years, I let the world believe I was forgettable. Every morning, I woke up before the sun touched the glass walls of our penthouse. I moved quietly through the kitchen, preparing breakfast with the kind of care people mistake for submission. Soft colors. Simple routines. Small gestures. I made myself easy to overlook. That wasn't an accident. It was a decision. Because when people stop paying attention to you, they start revealing everything. I noticed the way my husband, Daniel Hayes, checked his phone before he even looked at me. I noticed how his voice shifted, just slightly, whenever he lied. I noticed the perfume that didn't belong to me, lingering on his jackets like a careless confession. I never asked him about it. I didn't need to. I wasn't interested in excuses. I was interested in patterns. There's something people misunderstand about silence. They think it means weakness, fear, dependence. For me, silence was control. I never defended myself when I was dismissed at dinners. I never corrected anyone when they assumed I didn't understand the business conversations happening right in front of me, even when I understood them better than everyone at the table. Because reacting too early ruins everything. Some nights, I stood alone by the window, watching the city below, reflecting back at me like a mirror of everything I already owned, and everything I was about to take back. I didn't look like a victim. I looked like someone waiting. And I was. Waiting for the exact moment Daniel would make a mistake so irreversible that even I wouldn't stop what was coming next. The only thing I didn't know yet was how far he was willing to go to destroy himself. Ethan Hayes was the kind of man the world admired, and I learned very quickly why. Confident. Polished. Untouchable. At least, that's what everyone saw. In public, he spoke like a leader, decisive, sharp, always in control. People leaned in when he talked. Investors trusted him. His employees feared disappointing him. He carried power like it belonged to him. But behind closed doors, power shifted. Not in obvious ways. Not with shouting or violence. With dismissal. It started small. The way he would interrupt me mid-sentence, then pretend he didn't notice. The way he introduced me to others, "Emily doesn't really care about business," said with a light laugh that made everyone else laugh too. And I would smile. Always smile. Because correcting him would have exposed too much, too soon. Over time, he stopped seeing me as an equal, then as a partner, and eventually, as anything at all. I became background noise in my own life. Convenient. Replaceable. And the more invisible I became, the more comfortable he got. That's the dangerous part about arrogance. It blinds you. Ethan believed he built everything on his own. His company. His reputation. His future. He believed I needed him. And that belief gave him permission to become careless. What he didn't realize was that every time he diminished me, he was quietly handing me exactly what I needed. Proof. And the more confident he became, the closer he was getting to a mistake he wouldn't be able to talk his way out of. The question was, who would he become once he thought he'd already won? The first time Ethan crossed a line, no one else would have noticed. That's how it always begins. It was during a dinner with his board, one of those carefully staged evenings where every word was measured and every impression mattered. I sat beside him, quiet as always, observing more than participating. Halfway through the night, one of the investors asked me a simple question about market trends. I answered. Not emotionally. Not defensively. Just, correctly. For a brief second, the table went still. Then Ethan laughed. A soft, dismissive laugh that cut deeper than shouting ever could. Emily reads articles sometimes, he said, swirling his glass. It's cute. The table laughed with him. I didn't. I smiled. Because what no one realized was that I had just tested something, and confirmed it. Ethan wasn't just arrogant. He was threatened. Threatened enough to reduce me in front of people whose respect he desperately needed. Threatened enough to turn truth into something small, just to feel bigger. And that told me something important. He didn't see me as powerless. He needed to believe I was. That night, I didn't confront him. I didn't bring it up on the drive home. I didn't even let my expression change. But inside, something shifted. Not pain. Clarity. Because that small moment revealed a much larger pattern. And patterns are predictable. Which meant Ethan wasn't just underestimating me. He was following a script. And if I was patient enough, I could predict exactly how far he was willing to go. The real question was, what would he do next, when he thought no one was watching? The first real humiliation didn't happen in private. It happened where it would echo. Ethan insisted I attend a high-profile charity gala, his mother's event. Victoria Hayes didn't host gatherings, she curated them. Every guest had a purpose. Every detail signaled status. And I was the one detail she never approved. The moment I walked in, I felt it. The subtle glances. The polite smiles that never reached the eyes. Victoria greeted me last, her expression perfectly composed, her tone carefully sweet. Emily, dear, you look appropriate tonight. Appropriate. Not elegant. Not beautiful. Acceptable. I smiled, of course. I always did. But the real moment came later, when a group gathered near the stage. Someone asked how Ethan managed the pressure of running such a fast-growing company. Before he could answer, Victoria spoke. Oh, Ethan has always carried everything himself, she said proudly. Then her eyes shifted to me. He's never had much support at home. But he's strong. A pause. Just long enough. Just sharp enough. People looked at me, not directly, but enough to feel it. And then Ethan said nothing. He didn't correct her. Didn't even glance at me. That silence said more than anything else could have. In that moment, I wasn't just dismissed. I was erased. And still, I didn't react. Because humiliation, when it's public, serves a purpose. It reveals alliances. And that night, I saw clearly. This wasn't just about Ethan anymore. It was a system. A carefully built narrative where I was the weakest part. And systems like that don't break easily. Unless you know exactly where to apply pressure. The only question was, where was the fracture point? The first real loss didn't come from a word or a glance. It came from what I thought I could trust. Ethan's betrayal wasn't dramatic. It was subtle, surgical. One afternoon, I discovered an email, careless, meant to be hidden, revealing that he had quietly shifted a major business deal to favor someone else, a woman he barely knew, someone I had met only once at a party. I felt the ground tilt beneath me, but I didn't cry. I didn't confront him. What I lost wasn't money, not yet. It was trust. My perception of the life I thought I shared with him. The life where we were partners. And worse, his mother, Victoria, had known about it and said nothing. She smiled at me later, as if she owned my disappointment. In that moment, I understood something vital: I had no allies in my own home. But I also realized this: loss can be a lens. A way to see clearly. Every deception Ethan thought would stay hidden was now in plain view. And as I stood there, alone in our apartment, I made a choice. I wouldn't react impulsively. I wouldn't beg. I would wait. I would plan. And the question that settled in my mind was simple. How long could I let him think he was untouchable? For the first time, I let myself be truly alone. Alone with the weight of everything Ethan and his world had taken from me: trust, dignity, a sense of safety. The apartment felt colder than ever, despite the luxury around me. I watched my own reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows, questioning what I had allowed. I wanted to scream. To shake him, to demand justice in the way people do when they feel powerless. But I didn't. Instead, I let the anger settle like a quiet fire inside me. I let the humiliation sink in until it sharpened into clarity. Pain, I realized, was not weakness. It was information. Every betrayal, every dismissive glance, every condescending laugh, each one became a map. Each one revealed a pattern: in Ethan's arrogance, in Victoria's cruelty, in the way the world underestimated me. I withdrew from social calls, ignored invitations, and let the world believe I was broken. I watched, silently, as they all assumed I was beaten. But inside, I was calculating. Every isolation, every quiet night alone, strengthened me. And in that silence, I made a decision. I would not react. I would wait. I would strike. And the question echoing in my mind was: when would their mistakes be ripe for harvest? I remember the exact moment I decided that patience would be my weapon. It wasn't born out of anger. It wasn't born out of fear. It was born out of understanding that reactions are temporary, but strategy lasts. Every humiliation Ethan threw at me, every sneer from Victoria, every betrayal I endured, they were pieces of a puzzle. I could shout. I could storm out. I could beg for respect. I chose none of it. Instead, I made a promise to myself: I would observe. I would record. I would wait until the moment was perfect, until the world's arrogance created its own trap. I began to watch closely, not just Ethan, but everyone around him. Patterns emerged. Repetition. Overconfidence. Greed. Carelessness. Every flaw was a tool. Every misstep was an opportunity. And as I planned, I realized something profound: the world believed they were shaping me, but in truth, I was shaping them. I became invisible, not because I was weak, but because invisibility is the perfect cover for a predator who hunts with patience. The question that haunted me in the quietest moments wasn't if I would strike. It was, when. And when that moment came, nothing would save them from the consequences they had sown themselves. By now, Ethan seemed untouchable. In public, he thrived. His charm, his confidence, his arrogance, it was all performing perfectly. Everyone admired him. Everyone trusted him. And everyone underestimated me. I watched him from the shadows of our life together, noting every pattern, every predictable reaction. The more he flaunted his control, the clearer his weaknesses became. The pride that fueled his power was the same pride that would destroy him. But it wasn't about confrontation. It wasn't about emotion. Anger is loud, strategy is silent. I studied his routines, his deals, the people who whispered in his ear. I observed how he relied on others' assumptions, how easily he manipulated them, and how easily they, in turn, manipulated him. I realized something chilling: the man everyone celebrated was fragile. Fragile because his world existed only as long as no one questioned it. And I would be the one to question it. Not with drama. Not with yelling. With precision. Because the moment I revealed what I knew, everything he built on arrogance would crumble. And the question lingered, almost tasting it in my mind. How much longer would he play untouchable, before the first move fell against him? I began watching silently, like a shadow tracing every corner of their lives. Ethan's mistakes weren't random, they followed a rhythm, a pattern I could read if I stayed patient enough. I watched how he overextended his deals, how his investors trusted him blindly, how Victoria manipulated every social encounter to assert dominance. Every glance, every tone, every hesitation, they were all notes in a song only I could hear. I didn't intervene. I didn't warn anyone. I stayed invisible. I documented. I memorized. I calculated. Every betrayal he committed, every slight he thought I wouldn't notice, became evidence, not just of his arrogance, but of the opportunity waiting for me. Even his affair, his carefully hidden meetings, revealed more than he knew. The people he trusted most, thinking themselves loyal, were predictable pawns. I began shaping my own position quietly. Accounts, debts, minor investments, small moves no one would notice. Seeds planted where they couldn't see. I felt the thrill of control. Not power over him, not yet. But control over timing. Because the real question wasn't if I would act. It was when. And the world wouldn't know what hit it. The first move of my plan was subtle, invisible, but deadly. I started quietly acquiring small stakes in Ethan's company, just enough to go unnoticed, hidden behind layers of subsidiaries and shell accounts. Every transaction was a test, a probe, a way to feel out the boundaries of his empire. He never suspected me. He never even imagined. I also began monitoring the debts he thought were buried, the agreements he assumed no one would ever uncover. Every hidden contract, every mismanaged fund, every corner cut in secret became a thread I could pull. And I did it slowly, deliberately. Patience amplified every advantage. Meanwhile, Ethan flaunted his confidence. He didn't notice me slipping into positions of real control, because he never considered that I could be more than the quiet wife he dismissed at every meeting. And yet, with every move, I felt the weight of waiting. One wrong step, one exposure, and everything could collapse prematurely. But I trusted myself. I trusted the strategy one had built from years of observation and planning. I wasn't just reacting. I was orchestrating. And the thought that kept me awake at night, smiling quietly to myself, was this. When the time comes, Ethan will realize too late that the hand he believed harmless had been holding the power all along. Then came the complication, the first real threat to everything I had built. One of Ethan's investors, a sharp and suspicious man, began asking questions. Questions about accounts, about transfers, about debts that were supposed to be invisible. He was sniffing too close to the truth, and for a moment, I felt the pulse of panic. I couldn't afford a misstep. Not now. Not after years of silent planning. So I adapted. I redirected attention. I planted distractions in subtle, believable ways, rumors of a new deal, hints of an unrelated merger, small errors that drew suspicion elsewhere. Every action was calculated to keep the focus away from me while I continued my quiet accumulation of power. At the same time, I watched Ethan closely. His arrogance made him predictable. He reveled in the supposed chaos, unaware it was orchestrated, and he acted exactly as I expected, overconfident, careless, and certain of victory. It was exhilarating and terrifying, all at once. I realized then that strategy isn't just about moves on a board. It's about controlling perception, bending what others believe to your advantage. And in that quiet tension, I understood something crucial. Even when a plan seems perfect, there's always a moment when it teeters, and the question is whether you have the nerve to keep it from collapsing. I did. But the danger lingered. Sacrifice became the silent price of my plan. I had to let go of things I wanted, things that felt personal, to ensure everything I built stayed intact. Invitations ignored, friendships neglected, opportunities passed over, each one a calculated loss. People whispered that I had become distant, cold, even defeated. Perfect. Let them believe it. I also relinquished small comforts at home, keeping my routine minimal, my presence almost invisible. Ethan and Victoria assumed it was submission. They thought I was fragile, vulnerable, fading. And yet, each sacrifice sharpened me. Every loss strengthened my patience, honed my observation, clarified my strategy. I no longer reacted to insults or slights, I absorbed them. Stored them. Used them as ammunition for the day when timing and precision would collide. Even my own ego had to wait. I couldn't allow pride or impulse to ruin years of careful preparation. There were nights I doubted myself, wondering if the price was too high. But then I remembered, sacrifice is not weakness, it's leverage. And as I stood by the window one quiet night, the city below glittering with lives unaware of the storm to come, I whispered to myself. The moment is almost here. The question now wasn't whether I would win. It was how perfectly I would do it. The trap was set. Every piece of Ethan's life, every assumption he had made about me, every hidden misstep, was aligned perfectly. I had cultivated patience, gathered evidence, and positioned myself where no one would notice, until the right moment. The day came when Ethan believed he was on the verge of closing a massive investment. He was proud, arrogant, untouchable. Investors leaned in, ready to sign, eager to celebrate his genius. Victoria beamed from the side, convinced her son had conquered everything. I walked into that room quietly. No fanfare. No emotion. Just calm, deliberate steps. Every eye followed me as I approached the head of the table. Ethan's smile faltered. That subtle twitch told me he sensed something. But he didn't know what. I let the room settle. Then I spoke. I'm the investor you've been waiting for, Ethan. And I own everything you think is untouchable. Shock rippled across the room. Ethan's hands shook. Victoria's eyes widened. The investors whispered, stunned. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't yell. I didn't need to. Silence amplified the truth. And in that silence, the empire Ethan thought he controlled began to crumble. The question that echoed in the room, unspoken but heavy. How had the quiet wife, the one no one took seriously, become untouchable? Ethan froze, his confidence evaporating like mist under sunlight. I laid it all bare. The hidden debts he thought no one would uncover. The mismanaged funds. The corrupt deals. The betrayals he had believed were invisible. Every lie, every scheme, every betrayal was on the table, exposed in front of the people he had spent years impressing. Ethan, I said softly, letting each word linger, I'm not your wife. I'm your creditor. Victoria gasped. Investors murmured. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He had underestimated me for years, assumed my silence was weakness, assumed my patience was compliance. I didn't stop there. Every accomplice, every pawn he trusted, was illuminated under the light of truth. His empire, built on arrogance and deception, began to unravel in real time. I didn't gloat. I didn't raise my voice. The devastation was evident enough, his own failures were loud. When I finished, the room was still, except for the sound of Ethan's breath, shaky and defeated. And as I turned and walked out, I realized. The moment I had waited for wasn't just mine to claim. It was justice, precise, inevitable, and utterly silent. The question lingering in my mind was simple. Had they learned the cost of underestimating someone they assumed powerless? I never looked back. After exposing Ethan in front of the investors, I watched as everything he had clung to, status, money, power, slipped through his fingers. He begged. Pleaded. Offered deals, apologies, even his pride. I ignored every attempt. Silence was my answer. The lovers, the opportunists, the enablers, they all fell. His mistress was exposed for corporate espionage and fraud, arrested and disgraced. Victoria Hayes realized too late that the house she boasted about was now mine to reclaim. She found herself powerless, removed from the world she thought untouchable, forgotten in a life far below her expectations. As for Ethan, he vanished into anonymity, working in a call center, humiliated, stripped of everything he had taken for granted. I never called him. Never intervened. And when, months later, his number flashed on my phone, I simply threw it into the ocean. I stepped into my office in the skyscraper I owned, the city sprawling beneath me. My empire was real, thriving, and safe in the hands of those I trusted, my ally, my brother-in-law, now CEO. I smiled for the first time in years, not out of revenge, but because freedom tastes sweeter than any triumph. The world finally saw me as I always was, powerful, untouchable, and unshakable. And in that quiet victory, I whispered to no one but myself. The woman they underestimated was always in control. The question that lingered now, for anyone watching. Who in your life are you underestimating, at your own risk? If this story of patience, strategy, and silent power resonated with you, take a moment to like the video. It shows you value stories that make you think. I want to hear from you. Have you ever been underestimated or faced someone who thought they were untouchable? Share your experience in the comments. I read every single one. And if you want to see more stories where intelligence and timing win over arrogance and cruelty, subscribe to the channel and stay for the next unforgettable journey.